All right. So, there are more. I have a gallery view, so I see lots and lots of faces. um, but I assume that those of us that are in the panel or hosting the panel are in your top panel if you're looking at a gallery view yourselves. Um, we're going to go in alphabetical order, introducing our guests for the evening, our panelists, starting with Misty Talley, who is a director I've worked with already a couple of times. And she was the first woman to ever direct a original movie for SyFy, the SyFy channel. And she is the owner of Fable House Films, which is a production company. And she has taught at universities, including the University of Louisiana at Lafayette. She started out as an editor and was a very prolific editor. And I would love to have Misty tell us more about herself.
Sure. So that was pretty much it. No, that was good. That was a good summation. So yes, this last year I've been doing a lot of editing, so I still do a lot of that. Been doing a lot of post supervising recently, also some producing. Lots of TV movies. I'm getting ready to jump back into my first time back on set after the pandemic to co-produce a Lifetime Christmas movie in Mississippi. So yeah, but I've edited dozens of TV movies, as well as some theatrical and documentary work, directed for sharksploitation features for the SyFy channel, and have co-produced and post-supervised many more. So,
well, and something that I know about you personally is that despite you having next up on the docket a Lifetime Christmas movie, that you love a horror movie.
yes. So yeah, I love genre films big time, especially monster movies. So that's my jam. I have some cool stuff in development right now. That, for my next step to direct. So that's still, really super early stages, but yeah, that's my passion is horror movies, genre films, monster movies, that sort of thing.
Terrific. All right. Well, next up we have Angela Tucker, who started out in documentaries, and her first documentary was the first documentary ever made about people who choose an asexual existence, and it was called Asexual. And then she moved on to another documentary project that was a web series. And now I just recently saw a series of short films that she did that were all on the topic of the Black community and their relationship to water. Which is something that I know about but never really thought of as a topic for film. So, but I would love for you to explain more about your career and your aspirations and what you do.
Yeah, well, I just sort of my first project made during the pandemic was with a partnership with REI called The Trees Remember, and it's 3 different short films shot here in New Orleans with all local actors. And each of them sort of features like a Black woman having sort of a moment of connection in the outdoors. And so that is available on YouTube through REI, and we're also doing festivals and stuff like that. And we just did an in-person screening at the Broadside. Maybe that was like a month ago. But other than that, yeah, I do work both in documentary and fiction. And I have a bunch of things in development, as everyone does during this time. And I guess next up will be a Lifetime Christmas movie that I co-wrote and directed that Misty is producing. So we're really excited to shoot that sometime soon.
Well, and true confession here, I have to say that this was a kismet thing. I know both of these women individually and asked them both individually to be the panel, and had no idea whether they even knew each other, much less that the next project they're doing is together. So I think that's incredible that we have ended up with people who not just have jobs out there, but who are actually working together on this project I just think it's terrific. These are two amazing filmmakers working together. That's going to be a great project.
Yeah, I'm really, really excited to make it. And yeah, I'm just excited to just make lots more things. I guess I should say I also have a series that was featured on the Blacklist, and we're hoping, we're shopping it around, that kind of thing. It's called Tinder on the Res, that I co-wrote with this woman, Brooke Swanee, who lives in Montana, and we would film it sort of out on the res in Montana. So we'll see. Again, who knows? But that's what's up.
Well, all right. So I'm going to go ahead and start throwing some questions out there for you. I'm going to ask these questions to both of you. We will have some questions that are just individually for one or the other. Mm-hmm. But this is for both of you, and I'm, oh wait, no, I lie. I wanted to start with Misty and Angela, one separate question for each of you, and then go into the together questions. Misty, I am curious, you started as an editor and then moved into directing. What was it that pulled you into directing?
I guess as I was editing, I would get really frustrated that I felt like I didn't have what I needed to edit. And so it kind of came from a frustration with like wishing I was editing something that I was more in control of in a way.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. And then on the first feature I did, I remember editing it and going like, that's why they couldn't get everything. I now understand why.
Walk a mile in the shoes.
Yeah. But and I love a challenge. So it's one of those things where I'm never bored if something seems impossible. And so I think once I directed something and I was like, I felt like I'd never be good at it. And that has a huge draw for me.
Well, I think of an editor as the person who, the film's already pretty much in the can by the time it comes to you, and you never have to interact with actors. You never have to deal with any of, you don't even eat the food that we eat. Like there's no relationship to the set. So I wondered if that had something to do with it as well.
I do go to set and eat the food. But I don't know. It is a weird sort of separations, and like often I'll meet actors that I've edited their projects that they're in, and it's just like, hey, how's it go? Actually, with Dave Davis on Ozark Sharks, I edited 5 or 6 movies he'd been in, and so when I met him, I just started talking to him, and then he was like, "I'm Dave," and I was like, "Oh, that's right. I know you entirely, and you do not know me at all."
That has happened to me more than one time.
That I have that they'll never know,
Yeah. All right. Well, so Angela, you started in documentaries and then moved toward directing narrative films. Can you talk about that decision and letting the idea of letting actors tell your stories as opposed to the people living those stories?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I feel very format agnostic, if that makes any sense. Like, I really feel like I'm interested in making films that are about, underrepresented communities and telling those stories in different kinds of ways. And so I have the idea and then sort of think through what is the best means to try to tell this story. And sometimes it's like, oh, it makes sense to make a documentary. And sometimes I feel like I couldn't possibly tell this story in the documentary form for a lot of different reasons. And so I really had the interest in both genres, and then started out as an intern at a documentary production company, and they hired me. And then I ended up staying at that company and moving up over to director of production over 8 years. So the whole time wanting to do more fiction stuff. And ultimately I sort of stopped and did like a short and just kept doing fiction shorts while I was doing the documentary work, because ironically the documentary work was like more lucrative and I could sort of imagine a path forward. And the fiction work seemed a little bit like, who do I talk to get a movie made? I don't know, but I do think making these fiction shorts was really key because, you know, it's just getting your work out there. More and more people see it. And then I still do both, but I'm sort of able to juggle both of them through like doing short pieces. And that led me to, you know, I did a feature called All Styles that I shot in Baton Rouge. And that was part of that was through kind of the shorts work, but also through writing a script that we were trying to raise money for and having this like conversations with a lot of different people. And a lot of times it's, I don't want to make this movie with you, but what about this other thing that I want to do? You know, that's half of it, I feel like, is you think you're going to make one thing and then somebody's like, I like you, let's make something totally different. And that was how like All Styles came to be.
That happens to actors too. You know, there are many parts that I've played that I actually went in for the person that I was standing next to, you know, like I went in for some other part and then they were like, yeah, you're not right for that, but I like you. So here's a different part. So yeah, so that happens, I guess, no matter where you are in our industry. I think that's part of creativity, is just finding, you know, the right dress for the right model kind of thing.
Yeah.
So all right, well, okay, so these are the questions that are for both of you that it is fine with me, whoever answers first, I care not. Okay, so I know actors, having been one professionally for the last 25 plus years, and I know that one thing that we really, really want demystified is the casting process. So could you all talk about your casting process from your point of view, from your side? What is your process?
Misty.
So I guess everything I do is very quick turnaround. So the casting process for me always happens in about a week. And so a lot of it comes down right off the bat to just like slicing off who doesn't fit the actual description, because there's always, you know, so there's a lot of like, I guess, coldness at the beginning, especially where it's like looking at thumbnails and being like, no, and sort of narrowing it down, because I always do it via videos. Rarely have I had any live casting calls. You just don't have time to organize that sort of thing on shows the size that I do. So I always watch tapes. And so, you know, it comes down to basically from the thumbnails, picking like 10 for each character, watching through. And I guess within, it's an odd thing, because I don't even really know how to put it into words, but within the first like 10 seconds of hearing someone talk, it's pretty much a yes or a no in my mind, like a ooh, and they move to the next tier, or like a no. And what that thing is, I don't really know how to explain. This isn't helping demystify anything. Building more mystique.
You are our worst fear come to life. In the first 10 seconds, it's over.
It's like, I know, yeah, no, I'm sure makes it sound much scarier.
No, but that is what we teach. I mean, I teach, I have a book, and it is what we say 15 seconds. So you have cut us close, but yeah, we tell people if it's not in the first 15 seconds, skip it.
Yeah, there's just something that happens, and it's either like, you know, usually for each role, there's like 2 or 3 people that I'm like, ooh, I don't know. And like, I'll get the rest of the cast together and I'll be like, well, they'll be playing with them. I think these 2 would be a better, you know, standing next to each other. I think, you know, that would work nicely or whatnot. So some of it too is like, one of the hardest movies that I had to cast, the hardest movie I had to cast was Santa Jaws, which was the last movie that I directed. And it was all of a family, so I had to cast like the lead, and then everybody else had to, you know, like be great and also look like him. But not just that, they had to like, I had to cast 4 kids that weren't actually kids, like over 18-year-olds that look like 14 or under. So it was like a very exhaustive search for people that look like a family, adults that look like children. So that was like super tough, and it all came together. Like I think for that was one of my very favorite casts. And I think because I was forced to put so much time into it, and kind of consider people I maybe wouldn't have spent so much time considering before. So I kind of learned through that last one to kind of take more time and consider things a little deeper than my initial reactions, perhaps. So I think I'll be adjusting actually how I cast in the future based off that project.
Well, yeah, because one thing is that some actors are good auditioners and bad actors, and some actors are great actors and terrible auditioners. Legendarily, Robert De Niro, horrifying auditioner. So, but certainly able to do the job.
Oh yeah.
And yeah. So it is tricky. And I know for myself, I like to have that meeting time as well as the actual audition time, because there are a lot of elements. Angela, how is your process?
Well, I guess I'll talk about the Trees Remember, because that's the most recent thing I did. And I mean, that was great in that I didn't have to really consider the client, or because there's a whole piece of this, which is if you're making a piece for a broadcaster or something like that, as a director, I don't unilaterally decide the parts, right, I mean, you present
their say, and
you present who you'd like, but you're not like unilaterally picking, right? And so there are all these other elements to it that are things that are not even about craft in the way you want it to be about craft. But for the Trees Remember, REI was they have a studio, it's called REI Co-op Studios. This was sort of their first thing they're rolling out. They're actually putting money into like features and stuff. And they wanted to do a series that would just be kind of online. And they were looking for Black directors to pitch. And so I pitched, a bunch of other people, I guess, did too. And then I got the gig. But they were very like hands off in the sense of you cast who you want to cast. So that was a great experience, because I really wanted to make something that I could work with a lot of local people that I like a lot already and that I know. So we had, we worked with Brent Caballero as our casting director. I've worked with him a bunch of times and really love him, and he did a really good job. So, so a lot of it is I had the people that I knew that I liked. I had everyone read, because I just wanted Brent to do everything and not have to play. I didn't want to have to play a role with like my friends to like get them to put themselves on tape. I just said, I sent him like all of the people's names, even the people who were my good friends, and everybody was on tape. And then, and then from that, I kind of watch everything and take extensive notes. And I think it's interesting to also talk about the conversation that I have with Brent, which is really like, I have ideas in my head of who I think these people are, but I also give him sort of, the ability on this. I was like, I want different kinds of people. I don't want everyone to be super thin. I don't want everyone to be super conventionally attractive. I don't want, I was like, I want you to give me the people that you love, that you wish you could cast more. So that was my
and you did. I love your cast in those 3 shorts. It's fantastic cast.
So that was sort of the mandate. And that was what was helpful, is I had the ability to do that, because often you don't have the ability to do that. And often you have to have a lot of considerations that you wish you didn't. So on that was how we handled that. And then, and then we did, everything was through Zooms. We did do callbacks. We did kind of Zoom chemistry reads, which were weird, but I just literally needed to see, for the callbacks, I needed to see different actors reading together, just so in my brain I could, and you kind of, especially with like the second one, Maintenance, which is about a couple, you could kind of see different people were like flirting with each other, even on Zoom. And I was like, okay, okay. If they can flirt with each other on Zoom, they can flirt with each other in real life. So yeah, so that's like, that was how it worked for that piece.
Well, you sort of already answered my next question, because one thing I think a lot of actors are curious about in a region, we're in a secondary market, are any of your roles cast before wherever part of the casting process? So it sounds like on this project, you did all the casting hands-on. It was all about you. But Misty, I know you've had sometimes people sort of suggested, I'm sure at the very least, if not just said, this is your cast. So is there part of the process that happens before the process?
Yeah, well, so I work a lot with specifically like networks like SyFy or Lifetime. And so they get approvals. And so right off the bat, they'll be like, you have to have blank amount of name actors from this list. And so right off the bat, it's like, okay, we pick, go through the list, how we're thinking this person for this person, they approve it. And then after that, because we're always pushing to do as much local as possible, for budgetary and all sorts of reasons, it's just like, it's just better for us. And so, and then from there, it depends on the range of the movie, because sometimes if it's like, one of their bigger movies for the year, the network will want to approve everybody and every single thing in the movie. So it'll, we'll send them like, okay, here's our cast list, and they'll go through and be like, not this person, not that, for we don't know what reasons really, but so a lot of it is it's odd, but so it really depends on like the tier of movie that we're making for them. There's always going to be some they pick, and then beyond that, it's up to us, and then they approve it. So
now, Angela, on the Lifetime thing, will you be part of the casting process in that?
Sure.
Yeah.
So you guys get to do this together.
Yeah.
And it'll be your first experience having some actors forced upon you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that I'm hopeful, optimistic, but I know, there's going to be a couple of names, and my hope is that I get along with the leads. Like I really try to, if it has to be like, okay, this is the person who is your lead and there's no discussion, then I try to have a conversation with them as soon as possible, just to get their general vibe. So I know, what's ahead. I think that's key, is I want to have my own relationship with them, so that when we get on set, it's, we feel kind of more comfortable. Like even with All Styles, my first feature, I mean, we worked with this guy, Fiction. He had won So You Think You Can Dance. I
know who he is.
Yeah, he was the lead of that movie. I didn't know him. So it was like we did a lot of just like, at the time, Skypes, just talking, and really just like shooting the shit. It really wasn't even about the film. It was just so that I kind of knew him a little better, and we felt a little more comfortable when he got to town, and I just, and with that, you do start to you size people up. You have a sense of, okay, you never know how someone's going to be on set, but you can get a vibe. So that's really important to me. If I have somebody that I don't get to pick, then I need to just kind of get to know them right away.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, help us out with this then. What is it that y'all look for in a headshot or a resume or a casting file on a site or whatever? What is it that, you're looking at 1,000 of the same thing. What is it that pops?
I think I'm trying to remember like headshots that have like stood out to me for one reason or another. Because, flipping through headshots, I guess seeing a range is helpful. So even if I don't see the character type that I'm looking for them to fill, seeing that they have range to look like nerdy, like a badass, like, this is my cop pose sort of thing. So I think like the range of photos is something that I think it's kind of a trick of the mind where I'm like, oh, this is a very versatile person and they'll be able to fit this niche. Because there's a lot of sort of like archetypes in the movies I do where like, this is the nerdy guy, this is
right,
the, right. So I guess like range of headshots is something that I like to see and kind of pulls me in personally.
Angela, do you have a trick that we could pull on you?
Yeah, headshots are really hard because I really feel like that really depends on the role, you're just so for me, it really boils down to the audition. I mean, I have a few physical, so basically most of the things that I do, it's like mainly a Black cast with like, I would say mainly, right? And that's just what I'm doing. And so it's like, when I look at headshots, I I don't really get that much out of them. Like I really need to see the audition. So I trust, you kind of go through everything to get the person that seems in the right like age range and in the right, and that's why I always say to anyone who's doing any casting for me, like who is somebody that, you feel like doesn't get cast a lot because they're not like, conventionally attractive in a certain way. Throw those people in the mix for me too. So that even if I can't cast them, I can remember them for other things. So it's really the audition for me. And, and in that it's seeing, if they're doing it 2 times, that there is they interpreted it a different way. They didn't just do the same thing twice. Because when I see them do the same thing twice, I get a little bit like, well, what is it going to be like?
I think over time, the headshot resume has become more for the casting person than anyone else.
I think that too. Because I don't even feel like I see them like I used to. I should say.
Well, we used to make the board. You used to make your casting board.
Yeah. I worked in the casting office for like 2 months. My friend was a casting assistant and she had to go away on vacation, and I was like a receptionist someplace, and she was like, can you, sub for me these 2 months? This was back when, it was in person and it was the board. So I literally organized headshots and everything. And it was at Lincoln Center Theater. And it was really interesting because I could overhear these like crazy conversations. And it was a lot of like directors kind of really trying to fight for the non-celeb, and being able to get in 1 or 2 people that are not like super famous. But it was interesting just so that was when the headshot really mattered. But now it's just,
it's less important now. I think Zoom has revolutionized the use. I think online, the fact that we are now auditioning in our living rooms has changed so many things, and that's one I didn't see coming. I've seen a lot of this coming, as Olga can attest, but that was one I didn't really see coming, is that the headshot is just sort of like, it's for the casting person, and it's an electronic file. There's never a piece of paper with your actual photo on it. All right, you both have touched on this a little bit, but if you were to boil down, obviously it's different for every single role. But if you were to boil down what it is that you are looking for in an audition, help us with that. What are you looking for when we send in our tapes to the black hole in the sky? What is it that you're hoping to find when you open our tapes?
Angela said something interesting about keeping a list of people, like, I may want to like remembering people. And I just wanted to like follow up on that before I like get into it. But I also do that where when I see like a really great audition, I'm like, this isn't the role for them for whatever reason. They're a little too old, maybe or whatever it is. And like, I keep track of all of it. And I'm like, I have them in my mind all the time, like, I know who'd be good for this. So, that's maybe a hope, add some hope.
Well, it's ever as it has been and ever as it shall be, because the having of the list that's something that casting directors do, producers do. Everybody has a list, and it's real. And I mean, my third TV job was Friends, and I was on their list, and I was blown away by that. I didn't know how I ended up on their list. But I was like, so the list is real? Because when I walked into their casting office, there were literally, I'm nearly 6 feet tall, and there were stacks of headshot resumes taller than me all throughout the room. And I looked at it and I was like, how did you guys find me in all this? And they said, you're not in this, you're in our file. And I was like, there's a real file? That's a real thing? And they were like, yeah, you're in the file. So yeah, that's a real thing that people have a list.
Yeah. But so, and then to go back to your question, whenever I'm watching tapes, one thing that like will instantly, I guess, turn me off to it is if like I can't see it well or hear it well. It doesn't have to like look, production studio quality, but if I'm like, what? Like I just stop watching it. So having like a decent recording setup, it doesn't have to be fancy, but just clarity is a huge thing. And if that's lacking, then like I just disregard it in a lot of times. out of necessity, because like I said, I just like these all move so fast.
You're not going to be able to hear it or see it.
Totally. But I'm trying to think if there's anything on the other end of that I'm like instantly like kind of sucks me in. I guess this is maybe a little, I'm like, I feel like as I talk, I'm like, oh, I fall for gimmicks, but whenever somebody is like, you know, dressed as the character or like they have like an element that they've like thought about, you know, and brought it to it. Like, I'm trying to think of an example. Like in Santa Jaws, there was one cast member that I ended up casting who, he's played like a high school baseball player, and he's wearing like a baseball shirt and like had like a hat and stuff. Like he had thought like, what do I have in my closet that would make me look like a high school baseball player? And it was a great audition too. He just had a lot of, also he made, you know, eye contact, I feel like is really important. Like he was like looking past camera at the person he was reading to, and I could see he was like really looking at them. And maybe it's from editing, but like, you know, I think a lot of people do just naturally, but I stare at eyes. And I one of the things I notice when I edit that drives me crazy is eye flicker. So if like when people look from left to right in somebody's eye, it's just a sign that they're like not fully engaged, or like there's a lot of too much energy or anxiety there. So I look for a good eye. It's also
a sign that people don't know. Always look at the eye closest to the camera. Yeah. So if I'm looking at somebody and here's their two eyes, I look at the eye closest to the camera and just stare at only that eye.
Yes. Yeah. Because the flicker really, that every time I see that, I think I noticed it, but I think a lot of people don't know that they're noticing it, but also they say like, it doesn't quite land.
It looks scattered.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, Angela, is there any way we can trick you into liking us?
Well, no, those are good things. I guess other things would be, I know that sometimes you have to read with like whoever's around, but I think you have to really be conscious of who you're reading with. They don't have to be like incredible, but sometimes the person off camera that they're reading with is like really big and it's just like distracting, you know? So I would just kind of be mindful of choosing like who you're reading with. I'd rather have somebody who's just like, I'm just reading like this as the person than like someone who's like trying to like be big and acting off screen. Cause you're like, wait, what's going on off screen? It just distracts you. Like, and whenever you it sucks because whenever you're distracted, that takes away from like, you know,
you're competing with that.
Yeah, so that's kind of one thing I noticed that I was like, yeah, that's kind of, but you know, it's like I said before, I feel like making strong choices, and you know, if you're doing it twice, don't do it the same way, but just kind of make a bold choice, because you know that there's a lot of people, and you might as well just kind of go for it and make a bold choice. And even if you don't get cast, you made a choice, as opposed to, I think a lot of people play it safe. And when you're playing it safe, it's fine, but there's a lot of people, so it feels kind of blah. And so you just kind of like, you know, like if you have a take on the character that feels kind of different than people normally have, then just kind of go for it. I mean, that's my thing. Like, I noticed that. I noticed the people who I feel like are making bold choices.
Well, it's a little harder to do that without the casting directors around us anymore. You know, they used to be our guardrails. And so now we don't get to say, is that too much? Or have them say, can you do it again only a little bit this way? Or what? We don't have direction anymore. So it's a little harder. But you're actually getting into my next question, which is, would you rather, and it's clear to me what your answer is going to be, would you rather see an actor try something that fails but shows talent and ideas, or remain faithful to the script's descriptions and just do as written? I don't mean the language. The language, you should read the words as written.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I don't mean the word.
I'll jump in. I was going to say, yeah, definitely read the language as written. You know, I do get a little, like when I see auditions where people, it's one thing where you can tell someone they memorized it and they just got a word wrong and whatever. Right. That's the totally different thing than people who you see are like improving, and that's not really what you asked for, because then it makes you think they're going to be doing that on set, and I'm going to be trying to make my day, and they're just going to be like, doing their own thing. So, I think, don't, if there's a description, don't say, well, I'm just going to do the total opposite of that, but I mean, don't do that, but.
So don't be contrary to be contrary, but if you find an idea that's unusual
Right.
and unique, don't be afraid to try it.
Exactly. That's perfect. You said it just the way I would say it. Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Misty, how do you feel about all that? I feel like I know because I've worked with you, so I feel like I know that you're open. But
I very much. I've always like going for the feeling of it, and like I don't know. I'm drawn to like big energy. So
yeah, and you have quirky characters in your films that I've seen and that I've worked with you on. They're kind of a little over the top to begin with, as written.
Yeah, and that's kind of that's like what I like in a story and what I look for when I cast too. I'm drawn to like, for the things that I do, bigger personalities and bigger characters. I was helping a friend of mine who's an awesome actress, Jamie Newman. She was just in Lovecraft Country, and she was in The Deuce, and she's just great. She's doing really well as an actress, and she's just a blast and a really cool person. And she asked me to film some auditions with her, and she had like multiple ones to film, and I had never filmed somebody's audition before, and so it was very interesting for me. And I'm the kind of a perfectionist in the sense of like, if it was me, I would do it multiple times, pick the one I liked, and she'd do it. She'd be like, I brought this because I feel like this actress, like this character would only wear red every day. Like these like things that I'm like, what? Like, did they say that? And she's like, no, I can just tell by the like way that she talks that like she's like a red kind of lady, these like color choices that she made. And like, she's like, I feel like she do like, like a 1800s prostitute hairdo, and like what? And like, but when I would film
I totally get that though. I've had a character one time, I read the script, and the second I read it, for some reason I knew how she ran.
Yeah, it was the funniest thing. She'd just taken all these like impressions from like a page of dialogue, and it was really interesting to see her like, it was like the bold choices that Angela had mentioned, where it's kind of like her feeling of it. And then whenever I filmed it, I was like, oh yeah, totally. That is like, I never would have thought to take it in this sort of way. And then she did one, and she was like, perfect, that's the one, let's move on to the next audition. And then she
That's not normal.
And I was like,
whoa. Spoiled you.
But she got both the jobs. I was like, okay.
Well, there are many different ways to do it, but it is, I mean, the thing is that it is different now. We're all trying to be our own directors, and a lot of us have no skills in that area, and we're all trying to be casting directors, and we have no skills in that area. So a lot of us are trying to figure out how to direct ourselves. So these kinds of things you're telling us are very helpful. And I'm going to ask you another that's very similar. What are some of the pet peeves you have when you're auditioning an actor? And of course that includes self-taping now, because self-taping pet peeves are, that's an audition now. So either in person or just the entire process of what it is to deal with actors in an audition. What are some of your pet peeves?
Well, I think, we said all of the kind of do's and don'ts.
Right.
One thing I will say, I don't think it's a pet peeve, but when you're making a bold choice, you should, in reading the sides, get a sense of the style of the piece, because I think that sometimes people will make a choice that is like the total opposite of what, so if it's like a Nomadland kind of a movie, you don't want someone to be like, hey, you know what I mean? Like, and you can tell what Nomadland is reading like 2 pages of it, so try to like keep it in the kind of genre that you think the piece is, because that's something I've noticed that you'll just like, I just feel like you're in a whole other movie, so that's something I would be mindful of in sort of making those decisions. I sometimes, like, if you're doing like a callback, right? Let's say over Zoom and you're talking, sometimes, it's like, I'm all about actors asking me questions about the character and stuff like that. Sometimes it gets a little weird and schmoozy, you know, and you know what I mean? Where it's like, well, I know so-and-so and you know them, and you know, and it's like it just feels a little weird, and it makes me feel weird. Like, I just feel like I want to talk about the work and I want to get to know you, and like name dropping and schmoozing isn't like the way. That's just a personal choice, but I know other people feel it too. Other directors feel it too. So I wanted to share it.
Well, and Misty, do you have some ways we make you crazy?
Oh, I would agree with the sort of like schmoozing. I know exactly what Angela's talking about. It is a sort of thing where it's like, when you're trying to like focus on what you're, you know, especially when you're like directing something, your head is so in that project that when people are talking about like telling stories about other projects, or like, oh, I have this other thing coming up, I should talk to this person about you or whatever, you know, and it's just kind of like pulling your head out of the game. So I think in like, you know, having conversations just outside of like general, you know, normal conversations or the topic of the project you're working on is distracting, and kind of like you'll feel probably the director withdraw from you if you do that. This is an actor pet peeve that I kind of hate that I have it, but it is like one of those things that like sticks in my head. I'm very pro tattoo as a human, but I feel like for some reason a lot of actors that I've like cast have had logos tattooed on them, like whether it be like the Superman, you know, emblem or you know, and it's like just it becomes this sort of weird thing where it's like,
well, you can't have that.
I know it's such a hard thing, and I'm like, you know, there's nothing I can do about it, and probably, you know, if they're getting a tattoo as a teenager, not seeing their acting career coming up, and they love, you know, Batman or whatever, it's like it's, you know,
but you can't afford Batman in your shark movie, so it's problematic.
Maybe just like avoid you know, going crazy with tattoos, because it is, even if they're not logos, it becomes hard to get clearance for the artist's work. So
when I was starting out, 0 actors had any tattoos ever at all, and we were always hand ready for commercials. We just took all that very seriously, that you be the blank canvas and let them paint on you. But you know, now people are hired more for personalities and essence and whatever. It's not, you know, like reality TV as opposed to actual casting. So it's, you know, it's a different tone in a lot of the casting now. So a lot of people are no longer feeling like they have to be the blank canvas ready always for you to put that thing on the character on them.
Right. Well, yeah, because far be it for me to like tell anybody don't express yourself, you know, but also at the same time, I do love a blank canvas. There's something about it that it's like, because just having to troubleshoot things like that, it just, you know, I would never not cast somebody because of it, but it's just kind of like, it's a pet peeve. It's like, oh man, we have to deal with this too, you know?
Well, Angela, it's funny that you brought this up, because I'm actually going to separate you again and ask a separate question of each of you. But Angela, you brought this up, and this is a question I'm going to direct toward Misty. Tone. Tone is a very important part of figuring out how to detective work your way through a scene, especially when it's a small character and they don't give you much material and you don't have the script and you just have like a page or two. I train actors to use tone as a clue to how to present the scene. Shark movies have their own very specific tone. Is your approach to casting different for shark films than it is for other genres? And if so, how? Like, how should an actor prepare their scenes for a shark movie differently than they would for, you know, a Lifetime movie, or for, you know, Married with Children, or for whatever?
Well, I guess the shark movies that I do would fall into the category of camp and sharksploitation. Yeah. So I think if you're auditioning,
and they're very tongue-in-cheek. They're a lot of fun.
Yeah. If it's camp, if it's tongue-in-cheek, if it's like self-reflexive and like, you know, kind of poking fun at itself, I think there's like a tone that definitely any sort of genre film that's in that realm, you know, you can kind of ham it up a little bit and it'll do you good. An interesting casting thing that happened on the first movie, on Zombie Shark, was one of the main characters was this mercenary character, and I imagined like casting like a Terry Crews guy with like cigar hanging out of his mouth, you know, like
that would have been fun.
and then I didn't get to pick the casting on it, so it ended up, you know, being someone else who was taking it very seriously, and they were like, you know, my brother's in the military, and you wouldn't say this if you were doing this job, and it just like he did very well, but he played it very straight. He didn't get the tone of it at all. And it was hard to steer him that way, because anytime I'd give him a correction, he'd be like, that's not how it would be, you know? And it's like, well, I know. Make fun of how it would be, you know, like.
But how it would be is that they're not a bunch of zombie sharks lying around, you know, like that's just not part of how it would be anyway. So.
Out of the realm of, yeah. So I think certainly like for casting camp movies, there's, yeah.
You can have more fun, basically.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
that's actually, I think that's actually pretty clear, is that it's not that you want us to like be less serious about acting. You just want us to have more fun with the character, have more fun with the piece.
In a way, it's more like theater, you know, like where you're being kind of like, there's an extra layer of expressiveness on top of it, you know?
Well, and Angela, you have been working with both people in documentaries and actors as storytellers. What might actors learn from the people you document, who are actual real life people?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah, it's funny because there is so much of the same tools that you use when you're directing actors, when you're directing subjects, because you know, it's like you need people to feel comfortable. Sorry, coughing, but
you can take a break for water if you need to. We're not trying to play here.
Yeah, I mean, so I think it's like subjects can be very relaxed and not necessarily trying to please me in a way, you know, the dynamic is different. You know. I think you look for that in an actor in terms of, it's like, this is their interpretation of this is how they're sharing this with you. And yeah, it just feels there's this kind of a naturalness. I mean, I do have conversations with actors to try to, like, I'm not like trying to like do some like mind game, but I do want to hear like their connection to the material. And that goes across all genres. Like with, you know, with the Lifetime Christmas movie, I want to hear that people, they get that they're fun, they're into them, they're into the lightheartedness, you know, they're understanding the lane that it's in and they're kind of into it, right? And then I also want to understand, like, you know, things like, have you ever had your heart broken? Is it something that, you know, like, what was that like? You know, that I like to have some of those conversations so that when we're on ahead of time, because you don't really get a rehearsal process. So it's really like these conversations and things from these conversations I then use, where if I cast you and we're on set, then I can be like, remember when we talked about that thing? It's kind of like that moment. So I feel like I went all.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
My mom used to be a therapist, and she says that movies are emotional shorthand. People will say, oh, you know what it's like? It's like that scene. Did you see that movie with the scene? It's just like that. That's how I felt. Mm-hmm. And so that's interesting that you've like reverse engineered that of like using real life to feed the moment in the action. Mm-hmm. So, all right. Well, thank you for both those answers. And we're going back to asking both of you, what are you looking for on the day that might be different than the audition that actually got the actor the job in the first place?
I guess the big thing that changes between like the audition and being on the day is that how you're going to interact with, you know, who you're working against. So I guess the thing that I look for that would be not different, but the extra element that's added is like what your chemistry is with the rest of the cast and the people that you're playing off of. Because, you know, of course you can't really see that in an audition at all. Right. Trying to think as like as an individual, if there's anything that I like, you know, want to change about the person. Usually not. I feel like whenever I see an audition that I'm like, that's it, that's the person, like that's pretty much what I.
So you basically want them to bring what got them there.
A lot of times, yeah. Yeah, I can't really think of an instance where I gave a big adjustment, once we were on set, that changing their initial, I really don't change much about like the actor's initial interpretation of the character. I like cast that, and then I'm like, I know what they're going to do, and I let that happen. And my adjustments are usually about how they're interacting with other cast members specifically.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what about you, Angela?
Yeah, I think that I was thinking about what Misty was saying about that. And yeah, I mean, usually, yeah, you're, especially for these fast turnaround things, you are casting somebody for a take that they had on the character in, like, because it's so fast, you have to be like, okay, this is the take. I also try to, this is again, depending on how much time we have, once I sort of feel like I have the takes where I have it, I do try to say, give some kind of note that's completely different so that in the edit, I have something, and that will normally catch them off guard, but that's kind of the point, to see, to have them do something different. Just if, like, for example, if like if someone keeps playing a character really kind of hopeful and optimistic, and you feel like you've got a lot of that, then you will kind of go back, and then I'll go back and say, okay, I want to see a take of this where like all is lost. And
okay.
Probably I won't use the all is lost take. It's like when you're doing like a safety, but just in case, like the tonally you need to shift some moments, you have that.
Well, can you talk about the process of collaborating with the actors? Like, how do they fit into your process as a filmmaker?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, the first thing is like, once they're cast, I just have a general conversation. And it really is, I like to hear the actor. I don't go first. I let the actors say, like, they've read the scripts. I'll say, like, what did you think, pretty much? And then what did you think about your character? What do you think that they want? What do you think they want out of life? What do you think they want in the moment to moment? And I receive all of that information without really giving, like, I want to hear their take on it. And then usually, most times they're on the right track, or they're on an interesting track, right? But if someone is on like a totally wrong track about something, I'll kind of be like, okay, great ideas. This part is really interesting, but this other piece, I still need whatever,
I've had to say things like, wow, that is so fascinating that you found that in here, like, where you're just like,
yeah. Like, I mean, but it also, if I have a lot of respect for the actor, like, I worked on in the REI shorts, I worked, there was one called Migration that's about 2020, and it had this actress, Rhonda Dennett, in it, and she's amazing. And I have a lot of respect for her. And she had a slightly different take on the character than I did. And I actually just let her, like, I would say, well, I would try to get her to emote a little more. Like, I'd be like, well, I just want that to be a little bigger. And she'd be like, no, I don't think so. And I was like, okay. And,
I hired you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not telling it. I think it worked because these were shorts, and it was like, we had like the freedom to work together. But I also, she really did know best.
The first one?
What?
Is this the older woman in the first short?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. I like her. So yeah, on some level, she's right.
She was totally right. I mean, I hadn't made, this film was like almost like virtually a silent film in a lot of ways. And I was trying to make her performance bigger than it should have been. And, I mean, when she was just like, she was just like, no, she wouldn't do that for this reason. And it was like clear, she was like clear about it. And I just was like, okay, cool. And it just worked out. So it was just this thing of just having faith in the actor. But it was these initial conversations that she and I had where I trusted that she completely knew where the character was coming from. And also there was like, there was a lot of synergy for her to the character. There was a lot of things that were similar.
So it sounds like you do a lot of your directing before you even get on set, because you gather information about the actor before you even arrive to shoot anything.
Yeah, because, you don't get this long rehearsal process. And when they're on set, most of the time it's like you have that conversation is all you have. So I really try to have it be an in-depth conversation, or try to have a couple. Rhonda and I had a couple conversations. So that whole prep time for me is crazy because I'm also prepping all day and then at night having these like long heart-to-heart with actors and then turning around and doing it all again the next day.
I think that's a luxury that Misty hasn't gotten to enjoy, because I know the first time I met you was when you were yelling action, and I had 19 scenes in one day, I believe, something insane. I think you're still my record. And so talk about how actors fit into your process, how it is that you collaborate with actors.
Yeah. So I have usually the minimum amount of time, and sometimes they fly in that morning and go to wardrobe, get their clothes on, and then I meet them.
I was shooting another movie while I was shooting your movie. That was nuts.
Yeah. So sometimes it is like that for me. But ideally I do, a lot happens on the front end, like the long phone calls and whatnot, as Angela said. And it's just like a similar situation where I don't like to like create expectations of mine for actors. So a lot of it is like, so tell me what you think, and just like letting them go and then like agreeing with the things that I really agree with. And rarely do I try to like, correct the ship for them and be like, oh, what if it was more like this? Like they're, I feel like they already have it in their mind and I can kind of like hone it, but I don't want to change it.
Well, it sounds like both of you trust your actors like quite a bit. Like you just pick actors you want to work with.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
For sure. And I mean, on the day, I try to talk I think a perfect day on set directing would be if I didn't say one word. I would have nailed it. I would have communicated everything perfectly and picked like, all the right choices have already been made. But, I guess like second to that is just like answering questions or giving like small technical adjustments. But I had definitely found early on that if I over explain or if I talk too much, then like people get lost pretty easily. And they're there, they want to please you when you're directing. So it's like, I try very hard not to create an environment where people are looking at me for approval, all the time. And just kind of like,
I'm glad you're saying all this though, because a lot of us need that. And it's part of the reason we're in this job. And in my book, I talk about this and people are like, really? That if no director ever directs you, that's probably okay and maybe even good. I hardly ever hear from a director, ever. And I usually take that as a sign of that I'm the not problem. I'm not the thing that needs tending that day.
Yeah. Really get somebody way off course, and and if they are, I try to like give them one thing to help, and it might take a couple of things, but sometimes I'll hit on the one thing that they needed to hear, and then like a switch will flip. I'm trying to think of an example. Santa Jaws, because there was a lot of really young actors, and one of the like lead actress in it, she was very nervous, and it was like cold. She was running around outside. It was like an action sort of role. It was very like out of what she was used to playing. Right. And she was very kind of like inside of herself, and I was trying to get like, she's like, supposed to be the one that's like taking charge and like, no, we're doing this. And so a few days in, I had tried a couple of things, but she was still kind of, not big enough, not doing enough. And I was like, have you seen Wonder Woman yet? And she was like, yes, I love it. And I was like, that's what I want. I want Wonder Woman. And she was like, got it. And then she just like nailed it, you know? Out, and she was like pushing her way to the front, and she was like doing her eyebrows. I was like, awesome, great, you know?
Because movies are emotional shorthand.
Yeah, you just have to like find the thing that'll, you know, the little thing that turns the right switch on. But if you talk and talk and talk and talk and try to explain what you want, it never works, you know?
Well, what are some of the pet peeves you have of actor behavior on set?
Also the talking, like overly talking. Like, because it's distracting, because you don't, you know, you want, as a director, you want to keep them happy in the same way that they want to keep you happy, kind of. And so you're being attentive to them, but if they're just like a chatterbox, you know, it pulls you again out of what you're doing. That's probably.
What about you, Angela? Do you have an on-set pet peeve?
Yeah, the chatterbox one is a good one. And I understand it's just like a lot of nervous energy. But you know, if people are running around trying to make their day, it can be a little hard. Yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of it. I think it's important if you to not talk to the director too much in the moment, like in between takes, because I've had like, you know, it's one thing if the director isn't talking to you, you're doing a good job and it's fine. And I try to tell, you know, like if I don't have notes, go, you know, this is working well, these are some adjustments, just so people hear that and hear that it's working well. But you know, if no one is giving you notes, then it's all okay, you know, and to just understand that that's the case. But I don't have too many though, I don't think.
Well, so here's a question that
I have one actually. Lateness.
Oh yeah, no, never be late.
I mean, that goes without saying, but like, yeah, I would say lateness is like a real.
Lateness is important at every job, but it's so expensive at our job that it's totally unforgivable. It's so expensive. Every single millisecond costs money.
Yeah. So I would definitely, that's a big one.
Yeah, and the amount of money varies per project, but it can be that if you're 5 minutes late, you're costing, you know, like $150,000 for 5 minutes. I mean, that's a totally reasonable amount of money to lose over 5 minutes. So, you know, it's just not something we can afford.
Yeah.
No matter what your budget is.
Yeah.
Well, do actors need to be union to work in your projects? I mean, I'm a proud union member, and this is sponsored by, you know, a committee that's thrown together by several proud union members. But, you know, we know that there's a lot of work out there. Do people have to be union to work with you?
I mean, on the things I've worked with, I've been able to work both union and non-union. So
now you're moving forward into a more corporate environment. It's going to be less in your hands.
Right. So Misty, what do you say?
Yeah. Well, it still is a good bit of a mix, at least in Louisiana when you're filming here. You know, it doesn't like, even if somebody's non-union, we still have to work with SAG and pay fringes and all that for them. So
it's easier if everybody's union.
Will be in the union, yeah.
And we understand that casting handles the relationship between us and you. You know, we get it that we're not supposed to have a direct relationship with you. I mean, too bad you and I. It's too late. But I'm saying, like, that's normal that you don't have a direct relationship with the actors. But how might an actor reach out to you, and when might that be appropriate? If any of the people here wanted to let you know who they were and that they enjoyed this event, or that they would love for you to check out their website or whatever, how might somebody do that, and when might that be appropriate?
Well, I'm happy in this space to just give out my email because like it's not like it's like 7,000 people are going to email me.
Oh, but this is recording and I am going to put it on YouTube. So
yeah.
so
all right. Well, I'm going to put it in the chat, maybe.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I mean, I think if I'm happy to receive anything like I was in a film or I was in a, to keep me in the loop in that way, that totally makes sense. Because that is how you see actors and that is how you think, oh, that person's really interesting. So that feels totally appropriate to me. I mean, just speaking for me. I think too, I've been able to maintain, I have like friendships with a lot of actors. And, I think one thing I would say is if you are friends with someone who's a director, I wouldn't have an expectation that they're going to cast you in everything that they do.
Oh, I know. People ask me all the time if I'm going to be in Quentin's next movie. I'm like, I already did 4 things with him. Why would you think I'm going to? I don't know.
Yeah.
He's going to do one more movie. So what are the odds? He's going to do one more movie. Maybe.
Yeah. You don't know. I mean, that's the thing. It's like,
why would I think that he would though?
Well, that's it just becomes awkward. It's like we're all creative people climbing to the top, and
well, I don't include you in every project I do though. I don't include Misty in every project I do, and I love you guys. So
yeah, I know. I would just say, like, if you have a friend that's a director and they can, and you're friends with them, just don't, there's like not necessarily that expectation, because a lot of times you get
the reaching out.
Yeah.
I feel like the best thing you can do as an actor when having like a director friend is just like letting them know you're available in the sense of just being available, if that makes sense. I don't know. I think that's like a big part of like how actors find work in a lot of ways is just like availability and openness. In a broader sense, I think going to like networking events where, like a lot of actors have like gone to, if I do like a talk or something and they're like, oh, I'm actually an actor, we'll like chat, that sort of thing. Because if a director's in like a networking space, that's a great time to talk to them because they're there to talk to people.
Right.
Or if there's like, I haven't been to one in a while, but like showcases and stuff like that, I'll get invited to and I'll go. Things like that are good venues where directors are like in the headspace to like see new people and talk about new things. On occasion I'll have, because I'm pretty accessible, but I'll have actors email me and they're just like, oh, I love your films and I'd really like to be in one, and like send me their reel, and I'm like, oh great, thanks for reaching out, appreciate the kind words, and I'll check out their reel, and if I dig it, I'll like put them on my list.
So can people email you? Is that something also that, I mean, Angela's offering up her email. Are people able to email you and reach out to you?
That's totally fine. Yeah.
All right. So y'all heard it. If you don't follow up, that's on you. So,
yeah. Like,
I would love to hear. I'm sorry.
I'll watch a reel if somebody sends it,
Yeah. Well, and especially now they're so short. I would love to hear
talk about reels, but I love a good reel,
Well, that's good to know because.
I do too. Yeah, that's something we didn't talk about, but reels are very helpful to me. Especially like if you see an actor do something one way and you have that moment of, God, they're interesting, but I would just love to see them in something else. That's when I look at the reel. I don't look at the reel
Misty
first.
Said earlier about the photos of the different types.
Yeah, the reel is super helpful. Just being like, oh, I see that they can do this. Or if you have a bunch of different looks that have been shown in the things that you've made, it's really helpful to look at it for that too. And
how long will you watch a reel? What's the longest reel you'll watch?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know the time, but I mean, I don't really want to watch like a 10-minute reel or anything, right. But which sounds so sad, but it's true.
No, but 3 minutes is a lot of time for a lot of people. If you're doing a lot of things, then 3 minutes is a lot of time. So 10 minutes would be 3.5 times that. So
yeah, I think the 3 minutes is good because it's also the thing that's weird about reels is you're entering a scene, it's a moment, it's so you can only watch a little bit of like little snippets of one line, you have one line at being a nurse here, you know, it's just, it's, I think 3 minutes is a good call.
I do, now that we're talking about it, I think having a good reel is pretty essential, because sometimes I'll just see headshots and I'll like literally Google the person's name to see if they have a reel I can watch. So.
Oh, good to know. That's excellent.
Yeah, I do the same thing.
Well, and I would love to have Olga let us know if there are any questions from the crowd, but also Olga, you must have a question or two. You've been sitting here very quietly.
Well, I told everyone you can use the raise hand function, so no one has to feel like
yes, so you can raise your hands now. We are open for questions.
Itself, because I like that better. I think it's better to have that interaction. I think one of the things that might be on people's minds is how y'all get your funding for your projects, because there are plenty of people that are actors that like to make their own shorts or that sort of thing, and it seems to be like a stumbling block a lot of times. They might be writers and they have a script they want to produce. Mm-hmm. So is there any sort of tips or thoughts you have on that, or what has worked for you, and kind of along that vein?
Well, you know, I would say right now, you know, both REI and the Lifetime thing, that's kind of a separate, you know, those are entities that we've gotten money from. But in the past, I've made short films, and I've just like worked a bunch of gigs and raised, you know, self-funded it, or I've done a lot of crowdfunding, and that's worked well for me through like Kickstarter. I think just Kickstarter. So that's also, and then there's not a lot of grants.
I was gonna say most people I knew just use their own money.
Yeah, it's like using your own money, and Kickstarter or Indiegogo or Seed and Spark or crowdfunding in some ways is so I would just recommend doing, but like, you know, doing a short and working with people you know and people you trust, and you know, in a
location you own or have
location you own, and also to the location point, if you're trying to make something cheap, don't have it be in like a million different rooms, and you know, so you have to set a million different places. Like, try to think very simply.
Well, and try to think, do I have a friend that owns some fabulous spot that would make a good story?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Well, Misty, do you have anything to add to that?
Well, yeah, most of my work is, you know, through networks. And so it's like a pre-order situation where we don't really need to look for the funding for it. It's guaranteed. I guess the projects that I've done that I've funded myself, like short films and stuff I've made in the past, one I did through Kickstarter, and that one did very well. It went to Cannes. It was like, you know, but again, we were, like Angela said, we're playing inside of our sandbox for sure,
right? Where
there wasn't a lot of money, and we didn't have money for a sound guy, so we decided to make it a silent film. There's just like one character, and she was like walking, and you know, she didn't have any lines because there's nobody else in it, so it worked totally fine for that, you know. But and you would never think. So it's just kind of like, how can you smartly do it for virtually no money? So that one I did through Kickstarter, and then there was another one that I funded myself, and everybody, you know, threw me favors and stuff, because I just worked with people that were in the range where I was at the time, where they were trying to get out there and just make something. So I would say, yeah, just like play inside the sandbox that you're in, and like find people that are trying to do what you're trying to do, and they're in that realm, and work, you know, help each other and collaborate, because it's very hard to get anything funded unless you know it's going to be sold, because you know, who's going to be an investor in something that if they're pretty sure they're not going to get their money back, you know. And
right, like, and films almost never make a penny back.
You're lucky to like break even most times. So without, you know, without like the guarantee of like having the money, like the TV movies are super safe for that. You know, if it's not pre-ordered, it's like it's harsh, and it's a harsh thing, financing.
Well, do we have another question from Olga, or do we have another question from our crowd? Yes. Wait, I can't hear you yet. Do I have to unmute you?
Hey,
There we are.
I just want to say to Misty and Angela that I submitted an audition for your Christmas movie this past week. And Angela, I can go bigger. But you made me laugh.
Just proved it.
Wait, this made me laugh. I did an audition a few weeks ago and I was like a witness, and my friend read for me, and he asked me like 3 times if I got any comments on his reading.
Oh no.
Yeah, it was funny. It's okay. It was okay.
Oh my.
It was
I
okay.
taught a class last week in Georgia online, and I, in order to teach the class, I have to watch these little short scenes that everybody's done 2 takes of. And one of the scenes, it was the first time that I truly got to hear one of these distracting readers, because, I don't have a professional reader. My husband does it, but he's not in the way. He's not, he doesn't stand out in the crowd. He's just doing
right. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I had never really heard, like, what does a distracting reader really sound? And this one, I had to say it in front of the whole group. I had to say, your reader is, it sounded like he was on that old show, Hee Haw. It was like a used car dealer, the twangy, loud.
Yeah.
Like, oh no.
But I do also want to say the audition was one of the most fun I've done in a long time, and I love that. And I loved that y'all asked for a second read that was different than the first read. There were specific instructions that was so much fun to be able to submit 4 tapes. It was just a good experience as an actor, no matter what, to have that, freedom and fun in the audition. So anyway.
Oh, right on.
That's all.
Well, fantastic. Are you waving? Do you have a question? Yes. Bledsoe, I don't know your first name.
I'm sorry, I'm Jasmine.
Hi, Jasmine.
Hi. I just have a quick question. What region do you guys mainly focus on to pick, because I've auditioned, and I see on the audition sites, because I'm on Actors Access, and they normally want to focus on, there was one time where there was a casting call, and they wanted me to come, but I lived somewhere else, and they said they only focused on this area. So that's why I was asking, do you just nationwide, or do you just stick to that, that area? So, excuse me.
So how wide is your circumference?
I am free, like I'm available.
No, I mean to the ladies. I mean, both our filmmakers. How big is the area that you all are willing to patrol to find us?
Well, for a lot of the things we are on, it's like we're dealing with tax credits. And if you're dealing with tax credits, then you want an actor who is based. So for us, it would be like based in Louisiana or can be a Louisiana resident. Now, I'm not totally clear how that works. You guys know, actors know, but it's like, that's how we get the money back for the tax credit. So, so if you can make yourself a Louisiana resident or make yourself a resident, now I know that varies from like state to state in terms of what they require to be a resident, but that's why, like Georgia, where there's so much work there. And, if you were going to work in something in Georgia, you would need to prove that you're some kind of a resident, but there's like lots of cloak and dagger ways to do that. That I'll let other people talk about, because I don't really know.
Right. Although generally I will say none of it applies during COVID.
Okay.
Because of the air travel, et cetera, and hotels, et cetera, and et cetera, et cetera. There's a lot of things, a lot of what people were getting away with and fooling around with about skirting, I'm a local too, has sort of fallen apart under the pressure of COVID. And it might get rebuilt after COVID ends or gets different or whatever it's going to do next. But yeah, some of that has been curtailed just by nature.
Okay. Makes sense.
Misty, do you cast nationwide or just here regionally? Or
For like, you know, they're like I was saying earlier, we usually have requirements for name actors, and a lot of times they're coming from either Los Angeles or New York, because they're, you know, picks of from the network specifically. But for everybody else that we cast, which is, you know, 80-90% of the cast, we try to do all local, and within Louisiana. And then like right now I'm working on a movie in Mississippi, so do like, you know, Gulf South sort of. And in Mississippi, it's a smaller pool of actors, so we pull from Louisiana and, you know, in Georgia sometimes, things like that. So I guess Gulf South would be the answer in general, like of where I cast local actors from. But if we're shooting in Louisiana, we try to, you know, do all Louisiana locals. So.
Okay. Just all in Mississippi.
Well, yeah, right
'Cause I know
now.
some people. Okay.
Yeah, we're at for
Louisiana is both of their prime territory, but Louisiana actually includes, the Louisiana local actually includes the Mississippi citizenry in our local for our union. It doesn't necessarily mean the same thing to the tax credits, but to the union, it's the same union.
Okay.
So yeah, tax credit wise, they need that zip code. They need that driver's license or something that says, I'm going to put this back into the tax money here.
Okay.
So
Well,
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right. Yes. Tony.
Oh, hi.
Hit
I
us.
just wanted, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Just wanted to say, if the only reader you have is your husband, who has a Cajun accent thick as gumbo, it's a lot more difficult for the director to believe in the character, especially when it's supposed to be a cute young girl. And you got this rumbling baritone with a Cajun accent. But, you know, I mean, I'm glad I'm married to him.
Coach O.
It's my own fault for not having children who can act.
But you don't even really need someone who's an amazing actor, by the way. Like, I mean, it's just someone.
No, my husband works with foster children. He's not any kind of actor.
Yeah, it's like you just need someone who's just like not gonna get in the way. And I would suggest, you know, I know that a lot of actor friends pair up and they read for each other. And that, you know, that's,
and there's
also
some websites as well that you can hire people for very cheap. Even on Fiverr you can find people, which is $5. So
Oh
yeah.
On what is that?
Fiverr, everything is $5.
Oh,
Fiverr.
Fiverr. Okay.
Yeah. So so there are websites where you can hire readers if you can't buddy up with somebody.
Well, can't buddy up with anybody because we can't go anywhere.
No, I mean online. You can have somebody on your phone while you're doing it on your computer, vice versa, whatever. You can use electronically, you can get somebody in the room with you. They could be in LA, they could be anywhere. As a matter of fact, most of those websites are workers. You're hiring out of work actors in LA who are needing a little spending money. So yes, Jasmine.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. For the audition tapes, is it, how can I put this?
We're all girls. You can say anything you want.
No, I
Not all
can't.
girls.
No.
And we don't know that that's the issue. But use baby talk. Use language that'll get you there.
Yes, I will try. For the audition tapes, I was wondering, do you guys prefer to be like in costume, like maybe let me give you an example. If the script was saying you wanted to audition for a cop and you dress up as a cop, would you prefer like dressing up as the character as they're trying to perceive, or just going, I guess like not nude, but just bare where you can picture them as the cop?
I'm going to let them answer, but I'm going to tell you that since I did write a book on this, that I actually surveyed many casting directors, and the general consensus is don't costume, just indicate. So if you're a cop, wear a blue shirt.
Okay.
Yeah. I would agree. I would totally agree with that as well. It would just because like the chances of you having the exact kind of cop outfit that I imagine in my brain are like zero. So
it can become a distraction.
Yeah. I think indicate, that's a good way of putting that.
Yeah, just don't get in the way of it. Like if you're supposed to be a bride, then, wear something that's a pretty dress. Don't wear a construction worker's outfit, but you don't have to wear a bridal gown. You don't have to even wear anything white. You just don't want to get in the way of the idea that they could put that on you.
Okay. Gotcha.
Misty, do you agree?
The audition I was talking about earlier with the dude that he was going to be playing like a high school baseballer, he just like had like a Henley shirt on sort of thing where it was like 3/4 sleeve, and that alone I was like, oh, it's like it gave the impression of baseball.
Right.
Mhm.
Right.
Okay.
So it got you there without having to be like a thing.
Right. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
All right. So
I understand.
oh yes, Jake and Hunter.
All right, there you go. Now you can talk. Hello, Misty.
Hey. Hi.
Long
Hey, dudes.
time.
Hey, long time indeed. How are y'all?
Shit,
I know.
no, this is very interesting. I just walked into all this. Jake was watching, and this is very interesting. But I know nothing about acting, but I know how to bullshit. That's one thing.
It's been a very good talk. We've both thoroughly been enjoying it. We just wanted to say thank you.
But if you're ever looking,
Thank you.
Thank you.
if you're ever looking for an extra or whatever,
There are
talking about Louisiana and Lafayette, like I work all over.
there's like extra like casting agencies that you can just like basically sign up to be an extra and let them know where you're available and whatnot. But I'm trying to think of, I don't do a lot of extras casting. Normally have like an extras casting.
Yeah, there's usually a separate department that handles all that.
Yeah. We usually have like somebody dedicated, but I know there's like basically like they have like a data. Do you know more about it, Laura? Like the database for extras or how that works?
I've done one day of background work in my entire decades and decades.
It's a whole different thing. Yeah. It's a whole
and when I did it, it was first of all, it was the 80s. So there's that. But I also was only doing it I wanted to work with Spike Lee, and I knew with my skin tone that was really like not going to be a high priority for him.
Oh my God.
So I just was like, I want to be in it. I want to see how he works. I want to watch him work. So I did Jungle Fever, one day of background work. And,
that's awesome.
Oh wow, that's cool. Yeah.
Well, I've heard Matthew McConaughey's story, so I'm pretty sure I can pull that off.
Well, we're running out of time, and I see that Catherine has her hand up as well, and I want to make sure that we answer your question as well.
I just wanted to say hi. I just want to say hi, Misty.
Hi, Misty. And thank you guys.
All right, Catherine, what do you have for us?
Hey, well, okay. So my question is, and this is, so I have a son who just graduated from U Michigan, and he got a BFA in acting there, and he's out in California. And being the mom, and I'm trying to back off being a stage mom, right? But I work in the industry, not necessarily in motion picture, but in public television, content creation. And we know the actors in Jackson, Mississippi. We know the scene. And now I'm starting to dig into what the motion picture industry is doing. And so I'm telling him, I'm like, hey, you really need to maybe audition here. Maybe you need to like try to do a dual thing going on, because he doesn't have a SAG card. He doesn't have any credits in that way. I mean, he's done some regional theater.
All right, but how can we help you? What is the question?
So the question is, what is the advice? Like, what should he do? Should he continue to pursue just doing things out in Los Angeles, or how could he break in here?
Well, I can start you off while y'all are.
I think Laura would know more.
Yeah, I worked in LA for 18 years, and I again wrote a book about all the things that I learned, and one of the things I learned
parts.
Yes. One of the things that I learned, yes, it's called No Small Parts. But one of the
available on Kindle.
Yes, it is. Thank you, Tony. One of the things that I learned is that there are as many paths to making it as there are people doing that. Mm-hmm. And that making it means different things to different people. It certainly means something very different to me than it did to my very fancy friends who were totally willing to be famous. I am not willing to be famous unless I like cure cancer or something. because I don't want anybody looking in my trash. I don't want anybody to care who I'm with. I don't want anybody to watch my cycle. I'm not interested in that. But that said, I have always encouraged people to get their credits and their reel locally before going to LA. LA is 2 to 3 times as expensive to learn as it is here. It's 2 to 3 times as expensive to burn time while you're finding it and figuring it and doing it as it is here. So why wouldn't you, where there's easier accessibility, it's easier to get a union card, it's easier to do so many things here than to go to compete with, Matthew McConaughey or whoever you want to throw out there. Why not start here competing with Davy Dave? Why not just start with a more reasonable ask of yourself and build those credits and build your resume and build your reel? Because honestly, until you have proof that you can make money, they don't have any need for you in LA. LA is for proven moneymakers. Now you can break through in LA. I did it. A lot of people do it, but I was already SAG eligible before I got there. I already had a resume when I got there. I was a theater person, but I had a great education. I had a lot of stuff already going for me, and I was union eligible, which was really important. And so I feel like all that is stuff that it's easier to do locally and then take that to LA as proof that, hey, I can handle pro work. I'm a pro. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Angela and Misty, do you have anything to add to that, or?
No, it's not really my field of expertise.
Yeah.
But I feel like it was a very good answer. And I feel like anything in film, if you try to break into it in LA with no experience, you'll have a much tougher time.
It's so expensive. I just cannot express to you how expensive it is to learn out there. And not just because it's already, twice the cost of living, et cetera. I don't know if you know this, but it's like $12 to buy a box of Ritz crackers. It's not any kind of life that anybody can afford. It's absurd. But it's not just that. It's because that place is full of predators, as you would expect. And the predators are looking for dreamers, not actual working actors who know how to handle their business. They're looking for the 99% who are the dreamers and don't yet have the proof and are just trying. They're just struggling. They're trying to break in. They're trying to prove themselves. They're trying. And there is an entire secondary industry in LA built to take their money. Oh. Classes that teach you things that are useless, headshots you can never give to anybody, reels that are completely unwatchable. I mean, there's an entire cottage industry to remove your money from you because you have a dream. And that is not so much the case in a secondary market. It's a lot easier to stay away from rip-off artists in a secondary market. There are fewer predators here. There just are. Now, there's still predators anywhere you go, but there are fewer of them here. And you're more likely to know at least somebody's cousin or whatever that knows them and says, don't do business with them. Whereas in LA, they all seem so much fancier than you when you get there. They all seem so much more ahead of you. And like, why wouldn't I trust them? They're ahead of me. So it's just, there's a lot of reasons to really know what you're getting into out there. Mm-hmm. And well, that I'm going to leave it at that. You could read my book if you want to know more horror stories, but I'm not interested in horror stories. I'm interested in preparing actors in a practical way for what this really is, not the dream, but the actual job, the career. So, all right, we'll take one more from Jasmine just to be sweet, and then we gotta go. So, Jasmine, what you got for us?
Oh no, it's okay. Is it okay if I just leave my email so we can just cut to the chase? I don't want to.
Well, now they left theirs, so it's on you to reach out to them.
Gotcha.
So yes, and I'm seeing I was wondering how you can become union. Okay. You know what, Olga, can you hang out with Jasmine afterward and explain to her a little bit about joining the union and how that happens? Olga has a lot of information about that, Jasmine, so she can help you with that. Just stay in the room. Don't go anywhere.
Yes.
So, Okay. All right. Well, if it doesn't matter if you have any more questions. That's it. We've had a wonderful evening. I really, really want to thank Misty and Angela. Yeah, exactly. Thank you so much, Misty and Angela, for not just your infinite wisdom and all that, but for coming here and sharing with us and helping us to demystify the process and the relationship between actor and director, and what it is for you as local filmmakers. I think we got a lot of valuable information, and I'm really grateful to you for your time.
Anytime. I had fun. This is great.
Well, don't say that. I might get you again.
I would just like to say,
Anytime.
Hunter made a good point by saying, thank you for demystifying this.
I was like, oh.
Excellent. And on that note, all right. Thank you all so very much. Jasmine, you stick around to talk to Olga. And I will be putting a version of this. I'm going to clip out the first 20 minutes of me and Olga figuring out logistics. You're not going to have to be tortured with. If you want to share this with friends or whatever, I will put on the event page what the link is when I put it up on YouTube.
Sounds good.
Okay. All right. Thank you all so very much. Have a good night.
Bye.